This program, while curated to help you improve your health, contains general advice and should not replace the individual advice of your medical practitioner.
And obviously there's a need for certain things, but there's just so much just symptomatic care where people aren't really getting to the core of what they need to.
They're not. You know, there's a famous ad that they finally pulled down, but it was the one that just got me infuriated.
Tell me a little bit about how the bulk, I guess, of humans are existing at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if they're existing.
How do people do it? How do they upgrade their operating system?
Well, first things first, you got to upgrade your health, right? You got to fix your gut.
I only learnt last week the proton pump inhibitors were over the counter in America, which is...
It's ridiculous. Well, it's great. It's just like, hey, shut up, go back to work, watch your TV, everything's fine here. I mean, it is Animal Farm over here.
In life, it's normal to have ups and downs. But what do we do when we get stuck? I've always been fascinated by the healing journey. Why do some people get better while others fail to make the shift? Welcome to the Expert Series, where you'll meet 25 of the world leaders in health and wellness, discussing their passions and what it takes to make your shift.
There's an electrical feeling in the room.
I had to be a mom. It was so important to me.
I've always been a pain in the butt, and I love that.
I knew that I wanted to help people.
I'm Katherine Maslen, and this is The Shift. Hi, I'm Katherine Maslen, naturopath, author, and host of The Shift. In the Expert Series, we share the insights, stories, and expertise of each of our amazing experts. You might have met them on season 1 of The Shift, where we took snippets of these conversations and put them together into the series. If you haven't listened to season 1 yet, I'd recommend going back and listening to episode 1 on what it takes to make a shift in your gut health. We'll provide a link in the show notes. In this episode, we have Doctor of Oriental Medicine, Pedram Shojai. Known as the Urban Monk, Pedram helps people to step up their energy, take back their time, and step into their passion. Pedram is the founder of well.org and Urban Monk Nutrition. He is also a filmmaker, being the producer of several movies, including a docu-series on gut health called Interconnected. He is the author of multiple books, including the very popular book, The Urban Monk. Pedram is also a Qi Gong master, and we learn more about this during the interview. What really shines throughout this interview is Pedram's passion for changing the state of our healthcare system. You're going to hear some hard truths, and some of this may absolutely shock you. First up, you'll hear how Pedram decided to study with Daoist monks and where that led him.
My name is Dr. Pedram Shojai. I'm a filmmaker, author, lecturer, husband, dad, lots of things.
Tell me, what kind of doctor are you?
Doctor of Oriental Medicine. I am a Taoist abbot. I was a senior student under a Taoist Kung Fu master and just went to study the mystical stuff, and wanted to be a Jedi as a kid, and found Jedi masters to train under, and got to study with the Dalai Lama, the Karmapa Lama. It's been a fun ride.
Let's talk about the journey a little bit. So where were you born originally?
I was born in Iran, ran from Iran when the shooting began, got out of there right at the revolution. We had to go, and so came to America when I was 3, grew up in Southern California, pretty much stayed close to Southern California most of my life, aside from a lot of exotic world travel.
And what was your childhood like?
Childhood was pretty mellow. I mean, good immigrant parents worked their butts off to, get us over here and make something of ourselves. Just studied hard, worked hard to get somewhere. Went to UCLA, was top of my class in high school, and then decided I didn't want to go down that path. And then things took a really interesting turn, and I went off into the weird Jedi training.
So tell me, what was the moment that you made that decision that you weren't on the right path and that you wanted to sort of go down something different?
I was interning at the UCLA Pain Medicine Center, and I was getting depressed because our patients weren't getting better, they were just getting drugged. And simultaneously, I started taking a couple Tai Chi classes, and I could feel this energy coursing through my body, and what's this? And so there's one life filled with vitality and another one filled with pessimism and just really lack of enthusiastic role models who were getting great results at anything. And so, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I wanted to have a meaningful life. And so the cool stuff won.
So what was the next step then? So once you made that decision, what did you end up doing?
The decision wasn't really made intellectually. I was walking through the UCLA research library and I was lost. And I was saying, man, now what? You know, if you think you're going to be a doctor your whole life and then things kind of start to shift under your feet, you know, I said, hey, God, if you're out there, I could sure use a clue. And a book fell out of a bookshelf. And that usually doesn't happen. And so I took that as a clue, read the book. It was about Daoism. Didn't even know what that was. Found a Taoist master the next day and, started studying within a week.
I find sometimes the universe is really cryptic, but other times it just slaps you in the face like that, doesn't it?
That's it. And I'll take it in the form of a book falling out of a bookshelf versus a car accident that like changes your stars because you now, can't.
So you read the book, then what happened?
I was intrigued. And so I found a Taoist Kung Fu master pretty much down the street. So I was at UCLA, it was in North Hollywood, and went and just walked in, and he walked straight through the entire class, past my friend I came with, and looked straight at me and said, I've been expecting you. So I guess I was there.
So what happened next?
Hundreds, thousands of hours of Kung Fu, Tai Chi, deep horse stances, raking leaves. I mean, just, you're now sweeping the temple floor. You're learning. I stayed at UCLA. And so I would take 1 quarter a year off. I'd study real hard, take 1 quarter a year and go on sabbatical. Fasting, in the jungle or going into the high Himalayas or the high Andes and whatever else, I was called to do. And then just I kept doing it. And he, brought me, it turns out he was a senior student of one of the most legitimate, serious people that fled the Cultural Revolution in China. They killed those guys. They burned the temples. And so everyone's like, oh, did you go to China? I'm like, no, the temples in China are like Chinese Disneyland. Right? They're designed as tourist traps. They killed all the legitimate people, and the ones that fled, I had the great fortune of studying under. So I studied under the old man until he passed, and got the goods from people who were no longer welcome in China because they questioned authority.
How did that change you?
I mean, in every way possible, right? I was part of the algorithm, right? You grew up in America, and so you're a young man at the age of 17, and you're being required to declare who you're going to be for the rest of your life. It's a very declarative culture. In Australia, you go on a walkabout, you just go. It's like I've met more Australians in Europe and India than I could have imagined, because they have this culture of getting out there. Go find yourself, come back, figure out what you like, and then go make a living. Here, it's just like, get your ass in gear, get into the economy, and pay taxes and be part of the system now. Right. And so you're in this kind of formulaic upbringing. And then when that all breaks, now you're a rebel. Right. Now, you are looking at the Death Star saying, what is this thing?
When did you decide to go into TCM stuff?
So it just started to make sense, right? So, you take this kind of radical departure from, your formula in life. But, I did want to go to medicine to help people, right? And so then as I'm learning Kung Fu, you are not allowed to learn how to maim or kill unless you could also heal. And it's just part of kind of a system that is, encapsulated as a whole. So now all of a sudden, what you're eating and your diet and nutrition and how you're waking up in the morning, everything is integrated into a holistic operating system that isn't fragmented. So all of a sudden I'm learning about healing. And so Chinese medicine was this perfect place of me just kind of parking my enthusiasm. And, it was a career too. It's like my folks are going crazy, right? Immigrant parents who were like, what the hell have you done? We got you all the way to, ranked number 1 valedictorian in your high school, and then you drop the ball and you're going to go off and be a witch doctor.
You were supposed to be a doctor or engineer. What are you doing?
Yeah, you're going to go off and do this thing. And I'm like, okay, I'll be a witch doctor. And it was a somewhat of a concession to them to just be like, no, I'll do the doctor thing. I'll be fine, right? And so I became a doctor of Oriental medicine. And, the industry was just so limited when I came out. It was just, you have these guys who went to medical school, who I was tutoring all the way through, who are now too cool for school and can't talk to me because I'm doing this other thing that they're not allowed to look at. And so I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? And so I started a medical group and hired a bunch of doctors and said, no, we're doing this the right way. We're going to integrate East and West. And I'm smart enough, and I'm smart enough. This isn't crazy. And so we just started doing good work, and people started noticing.
You've heard a lot of client stories throughout this series, and you might be wondering if we could perhaps help you. Supporting people to shift is what we do best. Health is a journey, and we can help you to navigate this with one-on-one support with our clinical naturopaths, hypnotherapists, and counsellors. If working with us one-on-one interests you, go to theshiftclinic.com and click on Shift with Us.
The Shift!
What was the first book that you wrote?
So I wrote a book called Rise and Shine. So back up a little bit. I had some friends that were in like kind of the DVD, yoga space. And because I'm a Qi Gong guy, I've been doing Qi Gong my whole life. It was just my thing, right? I'm not like, I don't want to wear the guru thing on my sleeve. That's yucky, right? But I do Qi Gong. And so they're like, hey, would you mind doing these videos with us? And I was like, yeah, okay, that'd be cool, right? We do them. They start doing really well. And they're like, hey, what else do you got? Like, what else do you want to do? And so as we started talking about it, we started kind of concepting out this film called Vitality, which was my first film. And we were partnering in it. And then we kind of agreed to disagree because they went into like kind of hippie conspiracy, stuff the government doesn't want you to know about, technologies and all that. I'm like, man, I'm just trying to get people to eat vegetables. Like, you're missing that where the healthcare crisis is, right? It isn't this like kind of weird stuff. It's just in how we live. And so we agreed to disagree. I bought the rights, and then I got a book deal on the book called Rise and Shine, which is more esoteric, like how to clear your energy and stuff that came from my monk days. And then I made this kind of for the masses film. And so the book came out in like 2010, and the film came out in 2012. And so I just kind of fell into this content creation thing, being a Taoist monk, doctor of Oriental medicine guy, having to figure out a whole new thing.
Good combo.
Yeah. It's just, that's when when you're on the bleeding edge of where, God wants to put you, it's going to be uncomfortable. And it's going to stay uncomfortable or else you're not growing. And so I had to learn a bunch of stuff. I had no idea, I didn't have the time to feel sorry for myself. I just started learning things.
How did people take it when they got this information in this kind of format of a film where they can engage with it and they can sort of understand new concepts?
Yeah, it was interesting because as I did this, I started, kind of looking at how to get this message across and how to bring it down. When you're trained in like medicine, one of the things that happens is you have this like doctor ego where it's, amongst your friends and colleagues, the smarter you talk and the bigger words you use, the cooler you are. And so there's this kind of one-upsmanship of like, intellectual snobbery that happens in your dialogue. And where the disconnect is most people are reading at high school, if not way lower level of reading comprehension and listening. So I had to then take all these messages and really colloquialize them to be like, yo, here's the deal. You got to eat some food that doesn't kill you, right? And it's not, not to be that trite about it, but it just really learning the kind of translational science of taking information that people need to know and delivering it in a way that they can actually consume. And so once I did that, I talked to all these distributors and, not coming from the business, I was just sitting there, kind of scratching my head saying, wow, that's really parasitic. Like, why would I give you, I just spent my life savings in the last 2-3 years of my life making this film that I'm very proud of. And you're asking me to sign the rights away and hope to God you do something about it. And I don't really have faith in you. And so I'm going to try this other thing. And I created a lifestyle program to support the movie and made the movie free online and got hundreds of thousands of emails and hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue and like incredible thank you emails and like just this huge like upswell of positivity that came from generating content that helped people and then creating a business model that helped me help more people. And that was the birth of well.org because I was like, wow, I got all this extra footage. I don't know what to do with it. What do we do? And next thing I know, I'm like an internet guy. Right?
I love it. And I mean, how did that make you feel seeing all that positivity come back like that?
It's exhilarating, right? I mean, it's the one thing that's missing in the medical model is, people would wait months to come see me. I was pretty busy as a clinician, and they'd come in and they'd throw a chart down that was like, thick. And they'd be like, oh, here's all the stuff everyone's done that hasn't worked. Nothing works. I'm super depressed. You're my last chance. You're my only, help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope, And I'm like, God, no pressure. Let's figure out, the 15 drugs that you're on and let's untangle this web. And there's no hope. And there's no time. The insurance isn't going to pay me to sit there with them for the 3 hours it takes to go through all this stuff. And they can't afford to pay me for it, right? But at the same time, they're paying $80 a month for cable TV. They have a $6 Starbucks in their hand. They got a bunch of crap they don't need. And the one thing that they absolutely need to continue to live on this planet is their vitality and their health. And so just kind of extracting all of the kind of variables and the tangled web of lifestyle that led them to be in this position sitting in front of me in the clinic, begging me to be like, put in the magic needle that's going to fix everything. I'm like, come on, man. I can't do that. I'm good, but I'm not that good, right? So let's go talk about the decisions you've made for the last 40 years and how we could change some of the decisions you're going to make from today forward, right? And the ones that listened were the ones that had miraculous recovery, and the ones that are like, no. Look, I came over here for you to do something to me, right?
And this is where we need to change the way people think about the way they think. Yeah. And that's a big part of that shift is people need to really shift their values. They need to shift their attitude and their habits and their life ultimately. Yeah. And take self-responsibility, that this is their journey and they can do that.
Well, it's like, if you think about the healthcare system as the patient is the mob boss that's out there whacking people all week, and then they pull into the church to pray for forgiveness and say 10 Hail Marys and go back to whacking people all week. There isn't that kind of salvation at the end of a pill bottle, right? It does not work. Just stop being that way, right? Live a healthful life and it won't break.
It's really interesting because I was talking to Dr. William Davis and we were having a conversation about the ads on TV getting the US for drugs here. And he's like, A, it's unethical because it's like teaching people that they have a problem and they need a fix. But B, the people on those ads are really happy. He's like, that's not the reality. Those people aren't happy.
No.
There's this thing. And obviously there's a need for certain things, but there's just so much just symptomatic care where people aren't really getting to the core of what they need to.
They're not. There's a famous ad that they finally pulled down, but it was the one that just got me infuriated. There's an ad for one of these acid blockers. I think it was Prilosec or something, right? Where Larry the Cable Guy is standing in front of this hot dog stand saying, I used to be able to eat all this crap, and then I had all these stomach problems, but now I just take this stupid pill and I can go back to eating all this crap. And it's everything that is wrong with healthcare, American healthcare, the consumer-based model, and why the group stupidity of thinking that there's a pill to an ill. And so what does that acid blocker do? I mean, we get into the science of what happens there, how it kills the digestion, how it limits the hydrochloric acid, how it leads to dysbiosis in the microbiome and leads to endotoxicity that will then eventually give them neurological disorders or whatever the hell comes downstream. Don't worry, just take the pill.
And not to mention, when people are getting reflux, their body's trying to tell them something. And by just going and taking a pill, it's I'm just going to keep doing the thing I'm not supposed to be doing and enabling that. Yeah. I only learnt last week the proton pump inhibitors were over the counter in America, which is...
It's ridiculous. Well, it's great. It's just hey, shut up, go back to work, watch your TV, everything's fine here. I mean, it is Animal Farm over here. It's terrible. The system here is just absolutely broken, and it's atrocious in its lack of morality in how we're dealing with these problems.
I want to go back to the conversation around ego, and how that kind of prevents us moving forward. And this is where we look at new research coming out and doctors not uptaking it, not wanting to look at it, that type of thing. What do you think's going on there?
Look, it's really easy. I mean, I had a lot of doctors say to me, I don't believe in this. I'm like, I'm sorry, are we a church? Because here's the evidence in front of you. So now we are talking about you being campy and being part of a school of thought and part of a fraternity that is going to judge you for talking to anything outside of a cabal, right? And so there's a lot of identity. And then there's also just life, right? I know lots of doctors. I'm friends with, the best of the best in all this. And you know what? These people also have kids. They also sit in traffic. They go home. They got taxes. They got bills. They got all these just loans due. And so it is hard to put a doctor on a pedestal, expect them to continually improve and have all the answers every time. And if they don't, say, you know what, I don't really know that. Let me go research that. But the next time you have an appointment, let me go see what I can dig up on that. It's a lot easier for them to be like, here, next, right? Because the managed care, the third-party payer system has basically browbeat them into just, being on roller skates and just running around dispensing drugs all day. So there's a disincentive to think. There's no financial gain to actually be better if you're in the insurance model. And breaking out of the insurance model is a scary place to be because now you're like, wow, I got to charge money and advertise. How do I do this? I'm a nephrologist. You know what I mean? And so it's this scary wild, wild west where a lot of doctors just don't want to go.
Tell me a little bit about how the bulk, I guess, of humans are existing at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know if they're existing. I mean, I think they're actually like diminishing in flickering to the point where they are panicking because they feel the life force leaving their bodies. They feel the happiness leaving their bodies, and it's a big problem. So I mean, between the toxins in the food and the endotoxemia that comes from the bad bacteria, and the false operating systems that make you think that that purse is going to make you happier, or that new truck, or the whatever the hell thing you've been told you need is going to make you happier. It just pulls you out of what's really important in life, which is, picnicking under a tree and going for a walk and, just the pure, simple things in life. So I think a lot of people have fallen into a worldview that gets them to say, screw it, I might as well just eat this. So who cares anyways? The Titanic's going down. And so there's just this lack of enthusiasm and optimism that comes from a faulty worldview. We need a new narrative, right? A lot of people just, you go to church, you have a formula that life was supposed to follow. And then, church ends up molesting altar boys, right? And so things break, right? And so we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We don't have a morality. We don't have a common ethical fabric. And we don't have like a formula for like the good life that doesn't involve over-consuming and destroying the planet. And so we live in a very difficult time. And so unless you upgrade your operating system to not be a tick on the back of planet Earth and be a part of the solution and be a healthy person that's sustainably living and growing and thriving, I think it's just a very confusing time and place to be.
How do people do it? How do they upgrade their operating system?
Well, first things first, you got to upgrade your health, right? You got to fix your gut. You have to have the energy on a cellular level to have enthusiasm and happiness and detoxification pathways and all the things that actually help you just exist without feeling like your back's against the wall. And that comes from all the things that I'm sure you've already interviewed. I've done a lot of work in this space, and we know how to get healthy, we know how to stay healthy. The question is, what's between you and those decisions, and what do we need to do to get there? And there's plenty of resources there. So you got to get healthy, and that actually it's really perfect, because when you start making healthy decisions for yourself, when you start buying organic, you start supporting practices that also support the planet. When you start getting sustainable products, you start supporting companies that are helping sustainability happen, right? You become part of a life-affirming narrative that starts with you and then expands out from your life outward. And so you are now kind of a bastion of hope and stability in your household, in your community. But if you're talking about all this stuff while eating, Oreo cookies and like drinking a Diet Coke and trying to save the world, you're going to crash and burn. The world's not going to save. Everything's going to falter.
Do you have a question you'd like to see answered? Go to theshiftclinic.com/group, jump in the community and ask us.
The Shift!
What is health to you?
Health is an attitude. Health is an operating system. Health is a framework where life is thriving inside and outside. So health is emotional, it's psychological, it's financial, it's all of it. It's this operating system that allows for you to grow and sustain and be healthy and have freedom. Right? For me, health was, I was just in Park City and a friend says, hey, we have this tradition where we hike up this mountain and sled down. So next thing you know, you're hiking 45 minutes up this steep, icy cliff. And health is the ability to do that and enjoy that and be able to have the option to do that and not be like, oh, well, that sounds crazy. I can't do that, right? So being able to do the things that you want to do, having the cellular vitality to be able to engage in your life and have energy left over at the end of the day for your kids, your dreams, your aspirations. Most people are living on an energetic breadline. They're barely making it through their day, right? And they're borrowing from tomorrow to get through today with caffeine, right? Like I'm drinking reishi mushroom tea right now, right? It's like, they're living on crack and they're putting their lives on their credit cards. That's not health either, right? So for me, health is an operating system, and all of it has to fall into a sustainable way you're living.
Absolutely. Tell me about interconnected. Why did you decide to make the film, and what's been the journey with that?
Yeah, I mean, the microbiome has been a fascinating subject. For years I've been reading about it and looking at probiotics and what that means and what symbiosis means and all that. And so it just got to the point where there was a huge delta between what myself and my physician friends in space knew and what the general public knew, and it was going to take way too long to get there. So I commissioned it, and I traveled a lot, and I did a pretty epic 10-part series on the subject, going to the ivory towers and the functional doctors and the people who really are in the know, saying, hey, listen, I understand that you're doing this thing with your lab rats over here. What are the implications of this to people who are listening right now? What can I do in my life to bring some of this in? And it's just, it changed hundreds of thousands of lives, and it was a stunningly successful series because people were like, holy crap, this does change everything.
100%. What do you think our connection to our food is like?
Your connection to your food is everything. It's your connection to life. And so we've been so compartmentalized and separated from food that we don't understand how it grows. We don't, most people don't garden. First thing I did, in this new house that we got is I, tore out the lawn, threw in a garden. My kids know where food comes from, right? And to understand that, and to understand the primal, most important connection you have with life itself is how you consume life and how you transfer energy from one life form to another, and what that means and what your responsibility is to carry that life forward and do something with your life, right? And I think all that kind of sacred nature of it, as a monk, the sacred nature of that relationship has been severed. And now it's just this thing that you do because, your stomach's telling you you're hungry. And that's allowed us to, be tolerant of supply chains that are toxic and poisonous, because it doesn't matter. It's just calories, right? And so there's a whole reconciliation that has to happen in our relationship with food so that we can heal.
Yeah, definitely. So in Australia, our obesity rates are actually similar and our crappy food is similar, but when you read the labels, the stuff here is just so much worse. So if you're eating let's say a cookie in Australia, you've got wheat, you've got sugar, you've got, all the things. But if you're eating one here, you've got high fructose corn syrup, you've got genetically modified soy, you've got all these other things in there. So it is something that needs to change fundamentally from farming, food processing, manufacturing, but it needs to come from us.
Yeah, so the ingredients that you mentioned are all subsidized by American taxpayers. So we are actually paying to put that crap in the food, and then we are paying the healthcare dollars to try to heal from the diabetes, the heart disease, and the obesity that comes from the things that we subsidize to put in our food. It is unbelievable. It is so ridiculous. It's such a logical fallacy to say that anyone would even do that. Then you look at the broken kind of political model and you're like, man, I don't want your health insurance. I don't want your food. I'm going to get my own food supply chain. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to pay my doctor cash. I'm out. And that's what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah. It's shocking. And I think it's almost so shocking that some people they just won't believe it. They're like, no, that's just unbelievable. It sounds like something out of a conspiracy theory movie, but it actually is the reality. And there's so much evidence and it's really irrefutable that that's what's happening. Interestingly as well, that any doctors that speak out against this stuff, they sort of get blacklisted from the media. It's so there's this whole system going on that we don't even know about. So it's kind of really scary.
Well, listen, if your business is to be the body shop, you like it when it rains, right? Cars are sliding around and crashing. That's how you make a living, right? And so the incentives of the system are morally bankrupt, and there are too many incentives to keep people sick and to keep the system going. And so we're at a point where, an inflection point in our capitalism, frankly, where we have to decide whether or not this is who we are. And unfortunately, media has gotten so good at brainwashing and putting people in their echo chambers and leveraging them in directions that will get them, kind of heated up on their hot points, and then drive consensus and opinions in directions that are actually more insidious. And so there's a lot of brainwashing that happens, and media is very sophisticated, and people don't understand that, those commercials have a lot of neuroscience built into, helping you make decisions that you think came from yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So this program's called The Shift, and it's about making a shift in your life, your health, how you do things. Can you tell me about a time where you made a significant shift in your life?
I made a number of shifts in my life. I mean, I keep shifting. I shift so often it's hard to keep up with myself, which is dizzying. And so the shifts that have to happen when things aren't going your way are things that you have to question. So as a health guru authority guy, I can make a lot of excuses for why I'm tired, and I had like dark circles under my eyes. And it just got to the point where I said, hold on a second. You are not able to diagnose yourself what's going on, right? And so I had to then go do a bunch of tests and figure out, oh my God, turns out you're allergic to these 3 foods. And you know what I mean? And so if you're not able to turn that lens around and look at yourself, you're no longer in a position of moral authority of being able to give health advice.
Yeah. If you could give just one piece of advice to someone that wants to make a shift in their health, what would it be?
Start with your next meal and look at the ingredients and ask, did they come directly from Mother Earth, or have there been steps of processing along the way? And even if you're like, oh, that's wheat, it's wheat flour, like what is that? Someone had to bang it out of something. Like, do you understand what that food is and how that became food? And really start to question the origin of everything that goes into your mouth, and that will then create an operating system that will allow you to be more discerning of who you become, because you will become that food.
I'm sure you've gotten some amazing value from this episode, but let's look at some of the key take-homes. Number 1. The overarching message in this conversation was really to be more conscious and to not just get mindlessly pulled into conventions or norms just because that's what you were told was right. Often, the information you are given serves someone else and not you, so we need to be very curious about seeking the truth. Number 2. Many humans at the moment are not thriving like they should. Pedram talked about them feeling the life force and happiness leaving their bodies, and I have to say I agree with him. It's alarming just how many people are living in this state. Number 3. If you want to upgrade your life, you need to change your operating system. Working on your health mindset and the way you exist day to day will determine the outcome you have for your life. Knowing is great, but doing is better. Here are 3 things that you can do right now as a result of this conversation. Number 1, have a close look at how you're existing day to day. Are you conscious of what's going on around you, or are you living like a hamster on a wheel, not really understanding why you do what you do? Take back your power by consciously making a decision to shift. Number 2, write a list of all of the things that you're struggling with right now. Then look at them one by one and ask yourself the questions. What am I doing to create this issue in my life? And what can I be doing to get myself out of it? Be honest with yourself about where you're at and why you got there. Number 3, find the support you need to start upgrading your operating system. This could be getting informed and reading up on what you need to do, or perhaps listening to this podcast. It could be seeing a naturopath, nutritionist, acupuncturist, or other practitioner that can help you to uncover what is going on and give you a path to heal. Nothing changes if nothing changes, so see what you need to do to make that shift. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Pedram as much as I did chatting with him. To find out more about Pedram, visit his website, theurbanmonk.com. That's TheUrbanmonk.com, where you can find info about his books, courses, and more. And you can check out his docu-series on gut health at interconnectedseries.com. As always, we'll provide a link in the show notes. And lastly, if you loved the themes in this episode and want to know more, check out episode 11 of The Shift Season 1, called Dysfunction in the Industry We Call Health. We do a deep dive on more of these topics. In the next episode of the Expert Series, we have journalist and filmmaker Cale Brock, who shares some amazing insights about gut health and his time living with a remote tribe in Africa. You don't want to miss this one.
Coming up on The Shift.
And for those that aren't from Australia and in our generation, what's totally wild?
How do you describe totally wild?
What's their health like then, considering that they still do a little bit of the traditional and they're not fully plugged into what we have?
Their fitness and their apparent health and well-being was quite astonishing. Very lean individuals.
The science is so rudimentary compared to what it will be. It's crazy, but it's also come so far. Like, I can't imagine in 10 or 20 years where it's going to be. It's just going to be mind-blowing.
We'll have capsules. There'll be capsules available.
Reviews help us know that we're hitting the mark with what you need and help us to shape future seasons. I'd really appreciate it if you could take a few moments to leave us a review. I would love to know what you think.